Kate Falcha. Welcome to Irish Granny Tarot. This is our Saturday book. We're continuing with Dream It and Do It, video number 2. I love this book. This book challenges us to reconsider an awful lot of our assumptions about our reality, and just think it's great fun. So let's just continue. Let's move on. We're now on Chapter 5, The Reality Challenge from the Discoveries of Modern Physics, the New Science of Physics, the New Heaven of Physics by Temple. Great book. More and more recent physics discoveries are corresponding with ancient wisdom and philosophy. And I'll remind everybody that the ancients considered philosophy a science. So everything old is new again. Physicists used technology, mystics used subjective experience, and yet they frequently converge. Metaphysics, physics, meeting in the middle, and they converge about the underlying nature of reality. They're beginning to agree with each other, which is just phenomenal. Ancient mysticism, using subjective mental experiences, considers consciousness central and everything interconnected. And Western science operates within a materialistic reductionist paradigm of reality. So how do these two things converge? Science leans heavily on the pre-Socratic Greek philosopher Democritus, who said that everything is made of atomic particles separate from one another. Not entirely wrong, as far as it goes. Oh, next sentence I wrote, as far as it goes, this is true. However, each atom is 99.9999% empty space and contains particles that seem to come and go by turning into waves. And then in the margin, I read the next little bit of the book, and in the margin I wrote, WTF, sit down, just sit down for this. According to physics, atomic particles exist in waves of probability, potential. And human observation triggers the collapse of the wave into a particular material state. Let's go over that again. Modern physics indicates that atomic particles aren't particles until we look at them. They're waves of probability. But when we observe them, it triggers them to collapse and become particles. Okay. So, fundamental hard particles are based on speculation and probable outcome. What does that mean? Human observation is required to condense the probabilities into a material reality. I know, this is a lot. You really might want to put this on hold and think about it, maybe even write some of this down. Oh, there's a transcription underneath these videos. If you hit the bold title of the video under the picture at the beginning and scroll, you'll find a transcription, and you can follow along in the words, and you can put it on pause and you can think about what the book just said, because this takes some digesting. It really does. What page am I looking for here? Okay, so here's a quote. The universe does not exist out there, independent of us. We are inescapably involved in bringing about that which appears to be happening. We're not only observers, we are participators. In some strange sense, this is a participatory universe. Entanglement and non-locality, those are metaphysical terminology from plasma physics, quantum physics. This is the inexplicable, instantaneous interconnectedness of distantly separated and disconnected atomic particles, things that affect each other far away without any explanation. They do not fully understand how that happens, but it does. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. Very accurate. Everything in the universe is interconnected and interdependent. This is the conclusion that physicists are making. This is the knowledge that philosophers had millennia and millennia and millennia ago. So the Big Bang theory of quantum mechanics, the Big Bang theory and quantum mechanics both accept that the universe is and always has been. When I was in the first grade, they started us off on the Baltimore Catechism. This is a very Catholic thing. You know, I went to parochial schools, taught almost exclusively by the good sisters, by nuns. And Catholic children were given a book, and I have one somewhere. I'll have to dig it out and show you. It's this little paperback book. It's about this thick. It's about this big. And it's everything you're supposed to believe as a Catholic. And it's done in call and response. It asks a question, it answers the question, and then it goes on. And there are generalized topics. For example, there'd be a topic on mortal sin. And they'll have all these questions that lead you up to an understanding of what mortal sin is and everything about it. And we had to memorize the questions, and we had to memorize the answers. And if I recollect correctly, the very first question in the very first chapter is, who made me? God made me. Who is God? God is the supreme being who created heaven and earth and made all things. This is sad. This is what you call indoctrination. And indoctrination is Latin, and it means teaching that's put into you. It becomes a part of you. So the fundamental theories of physics rely on immaterial probability waves and highly sophisticated math. These are the fundamentals of physics. These are our understanding of our material world rely on these amorphous things that practically nobody fully understands. The math depends on presumptions. For example, imaginary numbers. Oh my God, here we go. Imaginary numbers. For example, an imaginary number would be the square root of a negative number. There's no tangible value, but it's a placeholder for a concept. So it cannot be quantified. It's an idea. On a number line, it's like a real number, but it's used in complex math. So now we're all lost, so let's move forward. The mathematician Kurt Gödel had the incompleteness theorem that math can never be complete and therefore cannot be applied to fully model the universe. In other words, our brains are just not up to the job. I mean, that's what he's trying not to say. We just can't do it. We don't have an understanding. So why do we see things as solid is the big question. And this has been explained by comparing it to a spinning fan. Think of a fan that's not moving and it's got blades like maybe 4 petals of a flower. And as soon as it starts to spin and go really fast, they're no longer distinct from each other to your vision. Fast blades start to look like a solid thing, and when it goes slowly, you can see the empty spaces between the blades. The author says that matter is a metaphysical assumption conceived by the mind rather than the mind being the result of a complex physical brain process. Okay, let's parse that statement. Matter is a metaphysical assumption. So matter is a concept that we've agreed to use to explain what we're seeing. And what we're seeing is interpreted by brain processes. And our minds are really not the result of complex brain processes. There's something else going on here. Ancient Hindus believed in the veil of Maya. We perceive reality as an illusion. That's from the Vedic texts. Modern physics more and more agrees with this, which is hilarious because the Vedic texts are really, really old. Modern physics says the notion of a separate organism is clearly an abstraction, as is also its boundary. Underlying all this is unbroken wholeness, even though our civilization has developed in such a way as to strongly emphasize the separation into parts. This is David Bohm, considered one of the most significant theoretical physicists of the 20th century. Quantum physics teaches us that in a very real sense, we all live in an imaginary reality. And then James Jeans, a physicist and cosmologist, says the universe looks more and more like a great thought rather than a great machine. The stuff of the world is mind stuffed. This is from Sir Arthur Eddington, astronomer, physicist, mathematician, and philosopher. He's pretty lazy, huh? And then we have Max Planck, the famous Max Planck, Nobel laureate physicist, famed originator of modern quantum theory. I regard consciousness as fundamental. Matter is derivative from consciousness. We cannot get behind consciousness. Everything that we talk about, everything that we regard as existing, postulates consciousness. There is no matter as such. It exists only by virtue of a force bringing the particle to vibration and holding it together in a minute solar system. We must assume behind this force the existence of a conscious and intelligent mind. The mind is the matrix of all matter. Matter doesn't exist. It's only a wave, a potential, until we look at it. Our sensory interaction with it creates it into solid matter. So what is that energy that's being transmitted? I believe that's what he's saying. I could be wrong, God knows, but let's just assume for the moment, for the sake of argument. Our world is a constructed, consensual reality. We are conditioned to socially conform, to accept this version of what it is we're all taking in. Freud said, I am not one of those who dismiss a priori the study of so-called occult psychic phenomena as unscientific, discreditable, or even as dangerous. If I were at the beginning rather than at the end of a scientific career, as I am today, I might possibly choose just this field of research in spite of all difficulties. This is Freud saying he would not have been a psychotherapist. He would have studied psychic phenomena. Jessica Utz, 2016 presidential address to the American Statistical Association. You don't get much more hardcore than that. The data in support of precognition and possibly other related phenomena are quite strong statistically and would be widely accepted if they pertain to something more mundane. Yet most scientists reject the possible reality of these abilities without ever looking at data. Don't look through Galileo's telescope. Now there is a definition of pseudoscience, basing conclusions on belief rather than data. Everything old is new again. So chapter 6, starting chapter 6 here. Parapsychological research on mind over matter. It's getting dark. It's been dark all day and now it's just getting a different layer of dark. Parapsychology, I'm sorry about the light in my glasses, but I can't read because it's dark and I'm blind anyway. So parapsychology is the scientific study of psychic phenomena, or psi, PSI phenomena. Phenomena that defy space and time. Space and time are a product of our dimension. They can't be explained by our materialistic view of reality. And they study the interdependence of consciousness from the physical brain, the independence of consciousness from the physical brain, and other constraints of the material world. The author wrote in another book about this, and he had his own experiences he writes about in his other book. His point of view, essentially, is that psi phenomena are not impossible and do occur. Early in the 1970s at McGill University, he had a post-grad position. He was working on his doctorate at Montreal. This is in Canada. And they were studying telepathy. He studied under Professor Donald Hebb, one of the 20th century's most eminent and influential theorists in brain function and behavior. This guy's a hardcore scientist. In 1951, this guy publicly stated that he did not accept ESP as real. He said he was absolutely prejudiced against it. So when the author, Eisenberg, studied under this man, he knew that this guy was predisposed to not accept anything psychic. Now they're studying telepathy. So the author had to do rigorous research to convince this doctor under the scrutiny of one of mainstream science's biggest skeptics. And sorry about the dog. But because of the author's thesis, this is what the skeptic, Dr. Hebbs, publicly said, recanting his previous point of view. He went on to say, if we must reject the ESP completely, wait a second. Either the experimental data are untrustworthy and those apparent cases of ESP outside the laboratory are not what they seem. That is, we must reject ESP completely, or we must recognize that an extensive revision of physics and physiology is being called for. It is not inconceivable that telepathy exists. So this thesis is in the appendix of his previous book. You can read his thesis about this. It's called Inner Spaces, the Parapsychological Exploration of the Mind. Might be really interesting. Psychic phenomena have been recorded since antiquity. And premonitions, gut feelings, you know, that microbiome thing going on in your gut. Eyes in the back of your neck, the placebo effect, mind over matter, all this stuff has been reported. So there are some major categories of parapsychological phenomenon. Telepathy, that's mind reading at a distance. Precognition, knowing what's going to happen. Clairvoyance, which would be like remote viewing, being able to see clearly where you aren't. It's where your vision travels. Psychokinesis. This is the one that I would love to see more of. Being able to move things with your thoughts. But it's more recently that these things have been even considered in the West. In 1882, the British Society for Psychical Research, that's when it formed and started to study it. In Russia, Russian and U.S. militaries did a lot of research to gain strategic advantages. They separately studied these sorts of things. So the United States had Project Stargate. This was a secret research project with the SRI International, which is a think tank, with physicist Hal Puthoff. And they went on with this study. For 25 years, they focused on remote viewing. And they provided actionable intelligence for several hundred military missions. So not only did they remote view for the military, they were able to successfully use what they saw in their missions. Edgar Mitchell had profound mystical experiences in space. And when he came back, he established the Institute of Noetic Sciences to do psi research of the highest quality, cutting edge science that is rigorous. And it's now being led by Dean Roden. And he says there's accumulated evidence that the odds are huge, greater than 1 billion to 1, against simple chance that these things are legitimately occurring. Also, from Edgar Mitchell's group IONS, they did a global consciousness project with Roger Nelson, which was a multidisciplinary international collaboration of scientists and engineers who collected data from random number generators in experiments of the impact of focus group attention on global events. And they found that using those, they affected events, and the odds against that being chance were 1 trillion to 1. Then there's the Global Coherence Initiative from 2008 from the Heart Math Institute. And it's how compassionate living can positively affect and lift the vibrations of those around us and therefore of the entire planet. And they did scientific studies of this. This is not just a bunch of old hippies sitting around having feelings. They put them through rigorous studies. They researched the interaction between internationally located human participants and Earth's magnetic fields by using a worldwide network of ultrasensitive magnetometers. The Global Coherence Initiative's data have revealed a strong correspondence between the former and the basic electromagnetic field of the human heart, as monitored by heart rate variability. So the collective feelings and intentions of participants in a meditative state can impact Earth's magnetic field. I don't think any of this is going to come as too much of a shock to any of us. I think we all sort of inherently, instinctively know this. But it's reassuring, it's validating to hear that very cut and dried science types are now collecting, proof. They need proof. Well, they're getting their proof because it is real. So they discovered in these experiments that acts of love and the effects of acts of love affect the globe. So fundamental concepts of the newest physics about reality use the same explanations as psi phenomena studies, and the collective base for psi is stronger than with the materialist fields of knowledge. So there's an agreement between parapsychological research, scientific study of parapsychological research phenomena, and these new physics realities and the physics, plasma physics, etc., studies that they've done. And what he doesn't mention, and I'll just toss it in, ancient philosophy. In 2017, the Academy of Advancement of Post-Materialistic Science, which was made by an international collection of leading scientists in their fields, were challenging the materialist scientism and dogmatic exclusion of evidence, of the point of view of others, and explanations for reality and our interconnectedness in our relationships with the world. So this is a group of scientists who got together and decided, okay, in 2017, we have to stop with the closed-minded stuff. In 2019, a publication of the Galileo Commission report by Scientific and Medical Network is the name of the group. 90 advisors from 30 universities around the globe called what they were talking about a wake-up call for the world. And they quoted the work of the visionary Jesuit priest and philosopher Pierre Teilhard de Chardin, who said, "We are not human beings having a spiritual experience, we are spiritual beings having a human experience." And this is the quote used as a wake-up call by 90 global scientific experts, tops in their field. So, Chapter 7, the historical spiritual teachings about the primacy of consciousness. So, the reason he didn't mention it is he dedicated a whole chapter. I forgot. So, the ancients believed that gods controlled fate and the external world, and that gods had supernatural powers. And of course, science completely debunks and denies all of this. But people globally, from ancient times to today, consistently report mystical experiences of non-ordinary reality. And they describe powerfully life-changing and difficult to put into words experiences. And they usually report a sense of being in the eternal now when they're describing these, and their sense of a connectedness to the oneness of all. And Edgar Mitchell reported this exact experience he had up in space, and he called this the overview effect. The experience of seeing Earth from space as a unitary whole created a mystical shift in attitude about what makes up reality for him. And he says that it was an epiphany about the interconnectedness of everything and the central role of consciousness. It was a transformative experience that the universe is participatory consciousness. The universe is gradations of planes of consciousness, and this is the Hermetic philosophy. And in the 19th century, a Canadian psychiatrist, R.M. Buck, had this to say. He wrote about his personal mystical experience of cosmic consciousness. He experienced the cosmos not as dead matter, but as a living presence. And he had the realization that the foundation principle of the world is what we call love, because it connects us all. And he quoted, "Whoever does not love does not know God, because God is love." And that's from John in the Bible. So these reports in the past from ancient mystic believers, philosophers, writers, etc., are parts of what becomes religion, various religions. But the mystical experiences were discouraged or dismissed. And the derivative doctrines, the religions, become unchallengeable truths, and to question them is heresy. So these numbers are crazy. I think I might have mentioned these in another video the other day, thinking that it was something we'd already covered, but I had read it in this book. Now we're going to talk about it. There are 4,000 active religions in the world, like generic 4,000 active religions. But here's the fun number. Christian denominations globally, 40,000. There are 40,000 independent groups of people who call themselves Christians and disagree with the other 39,999. All claim to be the one true path. So I have to look this up because I can't read my handwriting. Oh, okay. So this is a quote, and the guy says this: the map is not the territory. The map is not actual reality. The map is how you think about the territory, how you visualize it. And this is our reality. It's not what we're seeing, it's what we think we're seeing. And the lesson is to teach children how to think, not what to think. The Perennial Philosophy by Aldous Huxley talked about the commonalities in religions. He sought a common sameness, a common agreement, to find maybe a narrowing down and maybe find an origin story. And this is what he found that all religions seem to have in common. Reality is multidimensional. What we experience is only a superficial portion of the greater whole. The underlying reality of all existence is universal consciousness. Love is the organizing principle of the universe. Our ego, our sense of self, blocks our connection with the deeper level of ultimate reality of which we are but an extension. And then, therefore, our ego needs to be transcended. You know, I remember that Aldous Huxley was considered so controversial. This doesn't seem the least bit controversial to me, but okay. So hence the wisdom of the golden rule to do unto others as you would have them do unto you, a maxim reflecting our interconnectedness that's found in many of the world religions, including Buddhism, Christianity, Confucianism, Hinduism, Islam, Judaism, and Taoism, Baha'i. Similarly, it explains the logic of the religious notions of sin and karma. For example, the biblical proverb, you reap what you sow, since we are all ultimately interconnected. Buddha believed the suffering is created by the illusion of separateness of the egoic self. And we are trapped by this, that urge to feel like this, unique individual. Religions all teach the primacy of consciousness. Our right to transcendence, to connect with our deeper spiritual essence. But the big question is, how do you do that? Christianity says, be like a child. Zen Buddhism says you do it by shoshin, which is a beginner's mind. Sounds similar, doesn't it? Open attitude with no preconceptions. It would be like a child, right? Taoism says Tao that can be told is not the Tao that can be told is not the eternal Tao. Ultimate reality cannot be fully understood intellectually. Our brains are just not up to the job. It can only be experienced through silent stillness within you. The Bible says, be still and know that I am God. So can you take these convergences and come up with a modern science to prove some sort of empirical theory? Is that possible? So we come to chapter 8, how reality works. So here he says is what they've learned from the ancients and the moderns put together. And so first we start out with what reality is. Okay. What seems like reality is not what reality actually is. Our physical brains are not the source of our consciousness. Our consciousness doesn't live up there. Our consciousness interacts through there. Our individual perceptions are not caused by an independently existing physical reality out there. You are not what you think you are. The only thing you can personally know for certain at this moment is that you are experiencing awareness. The real basis for the major scientific breakthroughs and inventions is from internally sourced intuition and imagination rather than the result of trial and error experimentation. Everything is connected and we live in a participatory universe. So the logical conclusion is the popularly accepted model of reality is wrong. So let's use Occam's razor, which is the principle of primacy. Parsimony. Can't read my writing. The principle of parsimony. You follow the evidence. You seek the most obvious explanation instead of untested assumptions. You go for the simple, logical answer. Reality is our existence and the apparent external world, that there are manifestations of an underlying universal field of consciousness. So, how or why do we fit into this bigger picture? Comprehension is a huge mental stretch for the human brain to understand infinite consciousness. So what he's saying is our brains are inadequate for the job. But let's use a simple metaphor. Picture the infinite field of consciousness, the universal mind, is an ocean. It has mysterious depth and breadth. And on the surface, there are fluctuating waves. And they change shape and size constantly. They appear, they disappear, they reappear. But every wave is a temporary and superficial extension of the same underlying ocean. It's the common base. We're all different in this ocean. The waves are all different but connected. This is the oneness or the allness. So we're like those temporary waves in a cosmic sea of consciousness. We're one with the ocean, and from which we come and to which we go. But the ocean is much greater than any one of us, and we're all connected. Jesus said, I and the Father are one. The Father is greater than I. This also agrees with, now I'm going to say this wrong, the Amrit Bindu Upanishad, which is one of the Vedic texts of ancient India. Quote, that in whom resides all beings and who resides in all beings. It's God. We are like amphibians living in two different environments in different parts of our lives. We experience our egoic self. We can alter our state of consciousness through rituals or meditation or psychedelics. And we can experience non-duality, feeling united, feeling oneness. Non-duality, which means literally not two. In Christian, Tao, Buddhist, Hindu, Islam, and Judaism, is all referred to as the oneness of life. And there are other metaphors. The similarity to physics, between physics and ancient mysticism is like a Mobius strip, which loops back on itself. You know, one of those strips that you can't follow correctly. There's an illusion of two different sides, but it depends on your perspective. This is an analog for the complementary relationship between subject, awareness, and outer world. They seem separate, but they're connected and interdependent. Einstein explained that time and space are modes by which we think, and not conditions in which we live. A universal mind does not have to have had a beginning, a time before its own existence, just as with the Judeo-Christian Muslim concept of God as the eternal and the creator. The universal mind is omniscient, omnipotent, all-knowing, all-powerful. It has an existential need for things to be aware of it. I think that's interesting because you don't really think of God as needy. Demanding, yes. Needy, no. So, I'll tell you what I wrote in the margin here. Consciousness is awareness. To be aware, you need something to be aware of. And so I wrote in the margin, Ron DeSantis, Mr. Woke. He doesn't want people to be aware. So deprive them of something to be aware of. Ban books. Ban curricula. It's a perfect example in a microcosm. This powerful entity needs new and interesting things. God, not Ron DeSantis. So this implies change, and it implies the unexpected. So things evolve into a greater diversity and complexity. And his resistance down there in Florida, it's a fear of change. It's a fear of diversity. It's a fear of complexity. It's a fear of change. Therefore, the universal mind dreams us up for entertainment and expansion. That's the question. Does it? Kind of like daydreaming. God is daydreaming us. Are we like multiple personalities of God? I mean, these are just questions he's postulating. This is what great thinkers do. They sit around and think up questions nobody has an answer for. We exist in a participatory universe. We are creator and created. Keep in mind we're creator because nothing exists as a material object until we actually look at it and interact with it. The universal field of consciousness manifests through our daily lives. We're not working our way through it, we're creating it as we go. Physical reality is really waves of probability, and this is physics, and they have to be imagined and observed to take on form. The reason this is hard to see and to get is to protect virtual reality from being exposed, is the idea. And it's difficult for us to wake up to this realization. It's particularly hard because our ego dominates. We want to be unique, you know. It protects and inflates its own short-term interests. This is also hard to understand because of psi resistance. This is irrational and unethical, fearful behavior manifested by mainstream science and others who suppress the research. There's a real fear of this. It's also hard because psi phenomenon is elusive. It doesn't just offer itself up for study and understanding. Alan Watts was an English philosopher who interpreted Asian philosophy for Western minds. He wrote the book on the taboo against knowing who you are. The veiling of reality, he said, was a metaphysical game of hide and seek. God, the universal mind, shapeshifts. Watts also used the Vedic philosophies, the texts, to explain. Despite your amnesia, the world is looking at itself through your eyes. We provide a way for the universe to be conscious of itself. The kingdom of God is within you. And as you will soon learn, the only way out is in. And this is important. He put it in a little box to really emphasize it. Our virtual reality is a full immersion experience. It feels very real. Pain hurts, we bleed, we can seriously harm others. In this plane of reality, it's wise to also take care of our physical bodies and social needs while being compassionate of the others around us. Entrapment by the ego and the dark side. So this would be interesting. That which is aware does not equal that of which it is aware. The eye cannot see itself. Our senses provide us with a simulation that immerses us in a virtual reality. Your ego fully identifies with the virtual reality as being true reality, and you get trapped. Deepak Chopra says, don't let yourself get trapped. Don't confuse yourself with your selfie. Ram Dass says, be humble. If you think that you're enlightened, go open. Oh, I'm sorry. If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family. Oh my God, he must have met them. The Dalai Lama says that all unhappiness and conflict are a result of three poisonous emotions: greed, ignorance, and hatred. Today, all three dominate in the globe and have created an existential crisis. So those are greed, ignorance, and hatred. The antidote is to learn to develop emotional self-regulation. Be more compassionate, more compassionately focused on the needs of others. The love of others is what we need to strive for, not the love of power. This all seems so obvious. You know, it's hard to believe this needs to be spoken out loud and spelled out loud. It seems very obvious, and it's not like practically anybody missed the opportunity to hear it. Maybe it's just my environment. I hear it all the time, but it just seems like duh, you know? Not that I do it, but I've heard it before. Love one another. The illusion of duality and separation is most acute in romance. And so he goes on to explain. You feel a spark and you feel excitement and it's intoxicating and it's a connection and you feel like one. And then it gets lost when you feel like you're two different people and you butt heads because he can never remember where to put the glasses in the pantry. No, I'm sorry. And this is ego competition that's coming up against, fighting against soul connection. Other beliefs say the same thing. The Kabbalah says the same thing. Raga Yoga says the same thing. And the main goal is to transcend this egoic self, this individual consciousness. And that's really hard. We're kind of biologically hardwired, you know. So our main distraction is emotion. There's a lot of deception and power in the egoic self, and we need to liberate ourselves from that. I don't remember how much he goes into in this book, how to do that. I hope he gives us a step-by-step direction. So let go of the illusion that distorts. You are not an isolated individual, an isolated individual entity. Embrace your shared humanity as part of the universal mind. That necessitates, if you want to bring it down to specifics, find your commonality with your favorite Trump supporter. There's a challenge and a half. So we need to evolve from this idea of scarcity and competitive mindsets to the sustainable and collaborative global mindset. I think that's why I'm so resistant to things like sports, because they foster this competitive thing And it's inherent, to me, it feels inherently wrong. What's wrong with cooperating instead of competing? And I know you're setting goals for yourself, but the whole team thing, I just, I can't. So we're all united, and all of our fates are intertwined. And love is not just an emotion. This is really important. Love is not just an emotion. Love is a connection. It's a communion of souls. And it takes us to the spiritual level. And the goal for humanity is to be transformed by the golden rule. Love one another as you love yourself. How do we get from physics to that? Interesting, huh? Imagine how our culture, how our lives will change when we begin valuing go-givers as much as we value go-getters. Who said that? Ariana Huffington. And then, in the faces of men and women, I see God. Walt Whitman. Imagination is the source of all possibilities. Everything that ever existed began by imagining, and then discovering ways to manifest the imagination into the material world. Thought can become things, but remember, you need intention and action. The universe has a dreamlike nature, and your egoic self is a dream, and you can awaken inside the dream and intentionally redirect that. So this is going to talk a little bit about conscious dreaming. We're all just characters in each other's dreams, with our roles as part of the acting cast in a grand play. Perhaps Shakespeare, famed English playwright, in case you didn't recognize the name, was deeply insightful when he wrote, "All the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts." I've often thought that Shakespeare was an elevated being. His awareness, maybe not his life, but his understanding of human nature and the reality of human relationships. Highly intuitive. Let's see. Chapter 9. What the world needs now. We need to collectively dream for a better world. Chapter 9 is called How to Envision and Navigate Alternative Realities. So whatever the mind can conceive and believe and can achieve, it's easier said than done. It requires an open mind and self-discipline. Oh, man. So preparing the way. The ocean's calm underneath, and calm and clarity are available to us if we detach from our egoic self and let go of our concerns. Slow down our monkey minds to open a portal of access to a deeper reality. Be in the here and the now. It's a necessary state. Letting go of the future. Trust the universe. It's within you. Those could be considered platitudes. We hear it a lot. But take a minute and digest it because it's powerful. Breathing slower. Now this is coming into the science of this. Breathing slower lengthens the space between your thoughts. This increases the tone of the vagus nerve, and it calms the brain. So the breathing exercises you do going into a meditation serve a neurophysiological purpose. You can't separate. It helps to regulate an overly stressed nervous system and calm it down. We're starting to affect with meditation the autonomic nervous system. Autonomic, believed in medicine to be outside of our control. Not true. Close your eyes, slow your breathing, focus on your mind space. Paramahansa Yogananda says, raise your eyes a little bit with your eyes shut. Don't make it feel like a strain, but look at your third eye space inside your head. Meditation is the best way to access non-local consciousness beyond the illusion of separateness. This is called applying the magic, manifesting. First, quiet your mind. Second, have intention. And this is a really key factor. Have the intention. The Buddhists call it the one-pointedness of mind. Then sustain your focus on your intention with not attaching to distractions. Distractions are inevitable unless you go into a sensory deprivation chamber, but just let them go. Every time I sit down to meditate, my bird starts to go nuts, and I swear to God, she knows what I'm doing. I'm in a different end of the house, but she'll start singing and calling me, and I know that she knows what I'm doing, and it's so distracting. I have to wait until she's asleep late at night, because then she's not tuned into me. It's very interesting. So sustain your function, don't attach to distractions, and where attention goes, the energy flows, and you don't want the energy flowing into nonsense. You want to, So think about the possibility of your intention and not the possible obstacles to the intention. Choose to live fearlessly within your sacred dream. The second key factor after its intention, the second key factor after the intention is imagination. And work with imaginary thinking. Imagine a vivid vision of your desired future, like a map and a booster for your spirit. Richly envision what you desire to manifest and hold this in your consciousness with an attitude of expectation. Now, there's different kinds of meditating. There's meditating to receive messages. There's meditating to empty yourself up here to allow the spirit to come in. There's meditating for guidance of all kinds of things, but you can also meditate to manifest, meditate to imagine what it is you want. And this is what they're talking about here. Richly envision what you desire to manifest and hold this in your consciousness with an attitude of expectation, thought, intention. This expectation is like a magnet. It attracts opportunities and synchronicities. This is called dreaming the world into being. You might be tempted to regard this as magical thinking. People write off the placebo. People write off Martin Luther King's I Have a Dream. The third key factor is belief. After intention and imagination is belief. You must invest your belief in what you are imagining as if it is already real. Expectation results in manifestation. Why often very negative people make what they want to happen, because there has a great strength in their belief that this will happen for them. We can do the same thing. There's nothing special about them. They're just better sometimes at manifesting terrible stuff because they believe in it so strongly. And we need to believe just as strongly in the good stuff. The clearer your vision, the deeper your openness to the intuitive wisdom and power within, the more unshakable your resolve, the greater the odds in your favor. Such is also the underlying source of charisma, which draws and inspires others. That's interesting. So what you can learn to achieve is the ability to influence the probabilities towards the manifestation of your goals. Oh, now we have a few quotations here. Discovery consists of looking at the same thing as everyone else and thinking something different. This is a chemist, Nobel laureate, whose name I cannot even begin to pronounce. And then Jean Houston, psychologist and visionary, says that change the story and you change the perception. Change the perception and you change the world. Oops, shoot. Now we're on chapter 10, stretch your mind to shift reality. So this chapter has exercises in it, and I pulled out this. I'm not even going to go through all the exercises. This exercise is from a quote from Eckhart Tolle, who says, the beginning of spiritual awakening is the realization that you are not the voice in your head, but the one who is aware of the voice. You are the awareness behind your thoughts. As this realization grows, you begin to derive your sense of identity increasingly from the space of awareness rather from the narratives in your mind. So our beliefs are like filters that blind us to how others see the world, and we need to center ourselves in the here and now. So take care of your focus. And interesting little comment in this book, out of all this sort of jumped out at me. Phones cause intentional blindness. They distract in the same way that alcohol distracts and makes us less present. So the interaction with devices, not good. They have a negative effect on the memory, reflective reasoning, empathy, and creativity. As devices get more complex and intelligent, we reduce our own intelligence and our consciousness. When's the last time you memorized a phone number? Befriend your own attention. I often say that everywhere you go in public, there's TVs and things on. People are not comfortable with their own thoughts. Befriend your own attention. Root yourself in the here and now. The Buddhists say have no attachment. Reduce unnecessary suffering. Have no attachment. Face reality of the impermanence of the world. Or in simple terms, go with the flow. Then design for yourself a daily discipline of meditation. It will help access consciousness beyond your ego to a space within your thoughts, which is the source of intuitive wisdom. Intuition guides and helps access and process information. It's the opposite of rational decision-making, and it is feelings-based intuition. Trust the universe, be open to opportunities. The emotional self is regulating. The ego, emotional self-regulating is important. The ego keeps you trapped by emotion, which can control you. You need to learn to self-regulate. Don't let yourself get angry. Don't let yourself get depressed. We have control over those things. Then there's a Cherokee story that was too long to write out. So, an elder Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. He says, a fight is going on inside all of us, he explained to the boy. It's a terrible fight between two wolves. One is evil, the other is good. The same fight occurs inside of you. The grandson thought about it for a minute and then asked the grandfather, which wolf will win? The wise elder Cherokee replied, the one you feed. Okay. Focus with compassion on the needs of others. That's how you get yourself away from your own emotional problems. Be less self-centered. Focus on loving connectedness. Something that I've learned, I found very helpful. It doesn't always work. I'm far from an expert, but having suffered depression, I have discovered, hard as it is, and it's really hard. When you're depressed, the best thing to do is to remove that thought from your head for a minute and focus on what you can do for somebody else. It sounds trite. It sounds impossibly unimportant and small in the face of this dark cloud, of depression. But I swear to you, this works. If you do this as often as it takes. And it doesn't have to be grand displays of generosity and charity. You don't have to wear sackcloth and ashes and go live with the homeless people. Little tiny things. But when you start thinking of other people and not dwelling on yourself, it's remarkable how helpful that is. Be less self-centered, focused on loving connectedness. Look people in the eye. And it has been shown in studies that looking people in the eye increases connectivity. The eyes are the windows to the soul. And here's one that I just hate. I hate this because this is very hard for me. It goes against my personality. Choose optimism. You always have options. And here's a quote from Viktor Frankl, who wrote my favorite book. My favorite philosophy. Dickens is still my favorite. Viktor Frankl. Between stimulus and response is a space, and in that space is our freedom to choose. Be aware of your awareness. Focus on both surfaces of touching. When you touch your face, focus on your hand, focus on your face. Look at yourself in the mirror a while. No, thanks. Focus your attention on the negative space between things. Especially when you can see the light that connects things. You can imagine or focus on the sensations of a favorite food. And even if the food's not around, you'll start to salivate, and your stomach will start growling. And this is your autonomic nervous system that you're affecting with your mind. And it's supposed to be involuntary, but guess what? Imagine extending your energy and feeling an inch or two beyond your skin, and you can extend your range of feeling in general. It's like practicing. You keep thinking of that and close your eyes and see it and practice that. So lucid dreaming, this is the thing that everybody wanted to know about. And lucid dreaming is when you're asleep and you're dreaming, you are aware that you're asleep and you're dreaming. The feeling that dreams show us the real nature of reality is something that's shared by many indigenous groups around the world. In dream consciousness, we make things happen by wishing them to happen, because we are not only the observer of what we experience, but also the creator. And this is a Sufi belief. Some worldviews claim that we're all asleep and that dreaming you can program. We're asleep and dreaming right now. We can program our dreams. Dream yoga for dream control has been done for thousands of years in Tibet. And it's basically lucid dreaming. You sleep and you dream, and you know that you're asleep and you know that you're dreaming. And when you're aware in your dream, you can take control of the dream and redirect the dream. I'm getting hiccups. Sorry. So there's two states of sleep at the beginning and the end of sleep. When you're falling asleep, that's a hypnagogic state. And when you're waking up, that's a hypnopompic state. Those are traditional, I'm starting to get tired, transitional states of consciousness, and they're a bridge between consciousness and subconsciousness. And to lucid dream before you sleep, you decide that you're going to have a dream and that you're going to remember it. And when you're within a regular dream, try to remember this intention that you're going to have a lucid dream. Train yourself to recall your dreams on waking. Keep a little journal. Choose a symbol in your dream. Resolve that you will have a symbol in your dream, and in your dream have a symbol that you'll bring back to awakening, which was a key between the worlds. Is that it? Oh, that's the end of the book. Oh my God. And the final sentence is, the only way out is in. Oh, I'm surprised. I thought the book was longer, but it's not. It is a very small book. And I am going to do a drawing for this book from the names of people who donated to the PayPal book fund. And I just got several books just arrived. I got a couple more books by Paul Wallace. And I got a couple of books that I'm really interested in doing that I'm not going to tell you about. But you're going to love them. And I hope you enjoyed this book. I thought this book was a great little book. And I almost didn't do it. Somebody recommended it. I read the description of the book and I thought, but it wasn't terribly expensive, and it was short. And I thought, oh, okay, but I really like this book, because this book is kind of a bridge between physics and metaphysics. Lots of science and lots of philosophy all at the same time. Right up my alley. So thank you very much for watching. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate just the positive feedback I've gotten for these books. It's my pleasure to be able to yak about the books that I'm enjoying, because nobody around here wants to hear about it. So thank you very much for listening, and we'll do a card reading here in the next day or two about these books. I've got some conversations coming up, some collaborations coming up. It's been a flurry of activity, and I feel like I owe you guys some card readings. So comment, give me questions, write to irishgrannytarot@gmail.com. Don't forget, ask your Irish Granny and I'll solve your problems. I'll give you the advice my kids plug their ears to. Thank you very much, all of you, and Slán go fóill. Sláinte.